Welcome to Diversity in Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hi everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining us this morning on the show. Diversity and inclusion is critical for the success of your organization, yet many still miss the mark. The statistics are staggering. Only 23% of C-suites are made up of women, according to a study from the Women in the Workplace. On today's show, we have an expert on diversity and inclusion. We're pleased to welcome Laura Liswood, who's Secretary General of the Council of Women World Leaders, which is made up of women presidents, prime ministers, and heads of government. Laura is a nationally recognized speaker, advisor, and author. Her latest book is titled The Loudest Duck. She has been awarded for her contribution to women and minorities in the workplace and has also interviewed 15 current and former women presidents and prime ministers. Wow, you must be a very busy young lady, Laura. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us today.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for calling me a young lady.
Well, it's a state of mind, right? I mean, you're as young as you feel. So diversity and inclusion has made headlines here over the course of the last, couple of years now. But through the past year, as many companies evaluate their workplace efforts, it's at the forefront, right, of so many people running companies today. From your perspective, why is diversity and inclusion so important? And now here we are, it's on the front burner and everybody has got to pay attention to it, right?
Well, one hopes that everyone is paying attention to it. If they're not, that means they're pretty well ignoring not only the statistics like you just represented, but the facts on the ground in terms of what's happening. I think partly the reason for this importance is, and it's been going for a long time, but I think things like COVID have stripped away some of the lack of awareness, if you will, of some of the inequalities that we find in various parts of society.
And let's drill down on that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen some pretty stark differentiation in terms of health provisions that give people access to vaccines and health care. Mm-hmm. And we're getting more and more data around that. Right. I think we've seen some we've seen some very high visibility videos of interactions between, for example, law enforcement and certain communities. Right. And obviously social media has got its pluses and minuses, but it certainly has allowed for more visibility to some of these issues. Right. In addition to which, I think that, this whole notion of what is the business case for diversity that's been made and continues to be made is being embraced by many senior leaders.
That's right. And it's about time, right?
Well, we've been at this for quite a while, and for some people, they'd say they've been at it for hundreds of years.
But I mean, it's about time that organizations and companies take notice and make this more of a focal point rather than just something something that they've also been doing along the way, but make it more of a very deliberate initiative in their company.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, people have historically perhaps seen it as, well, this is kind of a nice to have. Right. And, we'll put it on our list and, something else will bump it down lower in the list. That's right. But I think most organizations, sophisticated ones, are saying, no, wait a minute. We know that there are changing demographics, for example. Most organizations, big ones at least, are global. So they kind of have a built-in diversity right there. Mm-hmm. Lots more evidence that diverse ideas will keep you, ensure that you're innovative and creative. So I think the arrows are all pointing in the right direction.
That's right. That's right. And it's safe to say that these companies have been running these companies, but now consumers are taking notice, right? And they're holding companies accountable. You just mentioned social media, and as we all know, every audience now has an audience, and it's important that companies do sit up and fly right on this topic, because they can't sweep it under the carpet any longer. These groups are becoming more alert and more aware of the businesses that they're doing business with and holding them accountable in this area, right?
Absolutely correct. I mean, the social media has helped that along. Things like the Me Too movement have pushed that along. So not only do you now have to look at what are all the positives you'll get from diversity, but you have to look at the risks if you don't
That's right.
have diversity.
That's right.
This risk of homogeneity, this risk of reputational management issues. And, a company can spend decades building up their reputation and within an hour lose their reputation.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point.
You're right on target with that is, some of the drivers for this.
Sure. What's needed to have, and I know this is a very loaded question, this is probably a 4-hour answer here, but or longer, but what's needed to have a diverse organization? What are some of the main ingredients?
First and foremost, I have a book called The Loudest Duck around diversity.
Yep.
And one of the sort of foundational points that I make is that a lot of organizations are still stuck in what I call the Noah's Ark approach to diversity, which is sort of, oh gosh, can we at least get 2 of each in the ark? Well, there's a
we
problem
laugh about it, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's what people do. They
That's right.
Let's just get 2 in.
That's right.
So they may even get those 2 in, but as I say in the book, if the giraffe in the ark is looking at the zebra and is looking at him, he says, "Gee, you're funny looking.
Yeah.
How do you do anything with that stupid short neck of yours?"
Right.
If we are doing that in the organization, after we brought all these different, categories of people in,
That's right.
then we're not actually going to get what we want from diversity,
That's
right? That's why you'll see in a lot of organizations moving on to this notion of inclusion, equity, belonging, So this notion of we can't just get them in, but we have to make sure we have programs in place. We have to make sure that people are treated fairly with their opportunities. We have to make sure our processes are fair. And so that, first and foremost, Jim, if you don't have senior leadership commitment to this, just walk away because you're not gonna move anything.
That's right.
But once you get that in the door, then you have to start looking at, okay, what are the processes that are kind of gatekeepers that allow some people to get ahead and some people not get ahead.
That's right. That's right. But Laura, I run a great company and the stockholders are happy and I've grown our stock price and our net profits are incredible and everybody seems to be happy and you bring this up, but I mean, why rock the boat?
Right. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Right. Well, there's a couple of challenges with that. First and foremost, there's assumption that everyone is happy within the organization.
Right. That's right. Huge assumption.
Yeah, that's a big, big assumption. And one of the things I always encourage organizations to do is to do what I call the meritocracy stress test. That is, does everyone in your organization feel like this is a meritocracy?
Right.
Or do certain people experience the organization as a perceived meritocracy?
That's right.
But other people go, well, actually, I'm not getting the good assignments at all. And, I'm not getting the feedback I need. And I'm not getting the support and the tools. And I'm not getting the mentoring that I see other people getting. So, there's, without getting too deep dive into, details,
sure,
that is an assumption. The second assumption is that, well, you may be doing okay now, but if you don't have that constant innovation and creativity, there is the real possibility that you're going to get, you'll get put out of the market at some point.
That's right.
If you're not keeping up with the market, if you're not keeping up with the changing needs and desires and demographic shifts that are going on. So, you could be the best buggy whip maker in the world, and you will be until you're not.
That's right. That's right. And I think a lot of companies look at this as kind of a two-prong approach. One is to say we want to do the right thing. The other one is that it's good for the bottom line. I mean, with minorities representing almost 40% of all of the dollars spent at retailers, doesn't it just make good business sense for businesses to pay attention to this and have their boardrooms and their management teams look like their customer base?
Well, certainly that is one compelling argument to, okay, our customer base is changing. How do we know what our customer base wants? Well, we have to have people in the organization who can help us be informed about that kind of thing. And we, there's some statistics would talk about better financial results. I'm less likely to want to hold to that because that can change over time. Right. But the whole notion of, hey, I want to be a creative organization. I want to make sure everyone feels, like they belong in it, that my turnover of employees is not great, that I can attract the best and the brightest, which is what every organization wants to do. And those are the compelling reasons that we want to do this.
You know, we've seen some major corporations now being led by females out there in incredible jobs, and obviously in the automotive sector, you've got Mary Barra, who's a chairman of the board and does a phenomenal job as CEO of a company like GM, and has got unbelievable profits in the company and has been running it very smoothly, and so many others. Talk to us about the importance and why companies really do need to hire more females in a C-suite position or in a as the CEO or president of the company. There's so much talent out there that I believe is just untapped simply because it's a female and not a male.
Well, I think you've just hit it on the head. There's so much talent out there that remains untapped.
Yeah.
That not only, I'm not going to posit to you, Jim, that women are better leaders than men leaders. That's not necessarily true. Sure. But do they have perhaps a different perspective?
Right.
Do they perhaps interact with employees, differently? Mm-hmm. So I have this, I use a lot of animal analogies. So I have this other notion I call the elephant and the mouse. Mm-hmm. So the elephant, for one thing, the elephant doesn't know much about the mouse, but the mouse knows everything about the elephant, right?
That's right.
Right. And the elephant has certain traits about it. It goes where it wants to go. It has its own way of thinking about things. It's not worried about the mouse.
Right.
The mouse has other traits. It's pretty hypersensitive, and it knows what the elephant wants and where the elephant's going because it's got to keep tabs on the elephant.
That's right.
It can multitask. It can eat and still be aware of where the elephant is.
That's right.
So
much more agile.
Right, more agile. So my theory basically is that dominant groups and non-dominant groups have different skill sets often.
Right.
They've had to. But the best organizations use both sets of skills.
Right.
Right. So you don't want all elephants and you don't want all mice.
That's right.
You want both.
That's right. That's a very good point. That's very good
so
point.
that argument says, well, part of your team are these people called women, and they certainly have certain perspectives on things. And you just want to make sure that, as you say, you're tapping all of the talent within the organization and all of the different ideas and all of the different perspectives. And you're rewarding people equally for that. And that your organization has a way that everyone who should rise to the top rises to the top.
That's right. That's right. How can companies better support women? What are a few best practices?
Well, there are a number. It's not only the notion of kind of the fix the woman kind of thing, which is often what happens. I call that, I've got all these little phrases. I call that the seed in the soil.
Right.
The seed is the individual.
Right.
Okay, we want to help every individual develop more. Mm-hmm. Right? So for women, that may be certain things that maybe they haven't been able to develop their skills on or haven't had the opportunity to develop their skills, whatever that might be. But then there's the soil, the institution. Mm-hmm. So it has a 50% responsibility to also shape.
Talk to me about, we see females get into the C-suite in companies. And I don't have any statistics on this. This is just my own survey among some of the female CEOs and CMOs and such that I have worked with and are aware of and have interviewed, quite honestly. It seems as though they sometimes struggle with hiring other females underneath them, and they'll have a staff of all males. And you kind of scratch your head and say, well, that, the whole idea is to, pass that down. Is it not? Shouldn't they be looking for more males to be reaching down and bringing up as well? What is your take on that?
Well, first and foremost, probably one of the reasons you haven't seen any hard data on that is because it doesn't exist.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you have seen is you are aware of this dynamic going on. And so you sort of hyper observe this dynamic.
Right.
Okay. So, you may have seen a woman doing that and you're going, ugh,
yeah.
I really would have hoped she would have done this. But
sure.
you missed the 5 other women that you talked to
right.
who did do that.
Right. Right.
You know, it's sort of this, we kind of do a little bit of what's called confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we believe something, it's like the old joke that I often use, you know, with men. You're driving along and somebody does something stupid in the car in front of you and you go, oh God, who's driving? You know, and you look and you go, woman driver.
Woman driver.
I knew it.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, you didn't see the 5 idiot men doing the exact same thing, but you did see the 1 idiot woman.
That's because we don't make mistakes driving. But I know
of course, you know, I stand completely corrected.
That's right.
Don't make any mistakes.
No, but you are so right.
That some people, it's just like you could observe that some men only hire men, and you're going, ugh,
yeah,
you know, what's the matter with you?
That's right.
And then you could observe 5 men who have hired a mix of people.
That's
so
right.
You know, I think it exists because we're all human beings. You know. And we all have our ways of doing things, but we have a tendency to be a little bit overly harsh when we say, okay, why didn't she support other women? And I interviewed Margaret Thatcher, right? You know, she was the only O in a room full of X's.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And she was perfectly happy being the only O in a room full of X's.
Yep.
Right?
She was amazing.
That's because of all of her own internal beliefs about who people were and things like that. Sure. So yes, there are some people who are perfectly content to have it this way.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
But you know, I would say that's getting, if it's happened at all, it's getting less and less.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think in the last, 5 or 10 years, it is getting better? I mean, do you, from your perspective, and obviously you're an expert in this area, do you think things are getting better in this area? Obviously not quick enough, but are they improving?
They are improving, yes. I think it's a lot slower than a lot of us of our delicate age thought it would improve. You know, that we thought, well, all of this effort, and I think part of the challenge is that people confuse effort with outcome. Mm-hmm. Cheryl Kaiser from University of Washington has coined a phrase called the illusion of inclusion. So a lot of organizations are doing all these programs,
right,
but they're not quite seeing the results,
right?
You know, right. And then you flip into something that you've probably seen talking to people is diversity fatigue. Yeah, we've been doing this, and we haven't seen the changes. But yes, have we changed? Sure. The military academies will now allow women. Women can go into combat. Sure. You know, you see the fuller inclusion of women. You know, we've certainly seen the educational numbers shift. Sure. Yeah. But, you know, most organizations don't have an intake problem anymore. Right. But they do still have an upgrade problem. Right, right. Yeah, and I think, what was your quote about the glass ceiling? Yeah, there's no glass ceiling. It's just a thick layer of men. And I will tell you that, from the male perspective, I happen to agree with you. I mean, it's incredible how many, smart, great females are out there in business, and that in so many cases, I hate to say it because my male counterparts will tell you, what are you doing? But it's true. I mean, there's no question that they're just not given the opportunities that they deserve. Well, and you therefore represent what we would like more men to represent, right, which is to be allies. That's right. In this effort. That's right. To be the kind of people like yourself who understand the dynamics and give people opportunities. And isn't it a shame that males see that as somewhat of a weakness, that if they show support to females and want to bring them up and include them in the C-suite and the decisions and bring them up to the president's suite or the CEO of a company if you're on a board or what have you, that might be looked upon by their colleagues as, what are you doing? Why are you soft in this area, right? And that has to change in order for us to really get anywhere. That's right. And you just said that has to change. Yeah. And it has to be that people don't see it as a zero-sum game. You win, I lose kind of thing. That's right. No, it's an addition. Yep. It's a way to, if you have more creativity and innovation, you're going to expand the pie. That's right. That's right. The pie of opportunity is not going to shrink. It's going to grow. That's right. It's actually a sign of strength, not weakness. Right. And that's why when we started this conversation saying it's really important to have leaders who have that kind of attitude. That's right. That's right.
So let's talk about your book, The Loudest Duck. Where'd you get the name? I love the name. And then let's talk about what you want the reader to leave with.
Well, The Loudest Duck comes from the notion that, as we talked about, that a lot of people want diversity in an organization. Mm-hmm. So they may get a person in from a culture that says the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Right.
Speak up, you get what you want.
That's right.
Right? That's culture, often American culture.
That's right.
You know, the Japanese are taught the nail that sticks out gets hit on the head, which means don't speak up.
Don't speak up.
Yeah. Women have been taught sort of, through their grandma, if you will, if you can't say anything nice,
don't say anything at all. That's right.
Right. And then the Chinese are taught the loudest duck gets shot.
Wow.
Right? Which means don't speak up.
That's right.
So I'll say that to people. I'll say, okay, you told me you wanted diversity. Now I'm giving you diversity.
Yeah.
You have a wheel, a duck, a nail, and a nice.
Yep. Who's
doing all the talking?
That's right.
The only person doing the talking is the wheel.
Yep.
So you're overhearing the wheel, you're underhearing the nail, duck, nice.
That's right.
And you don't get those ideas of the people who've been taught this other thing. So if we're going to embrace if we're going to bring in all these different cultures and all these different ways of doing things, we better have the tools to deal with those things. Right. So in a way, that's kind of the message that I like to get across to people. Mm-hmm. You can't just say, I want this sort of number counting diversity.
Right.
You have to, in fact, put the tools in place mm-hmm. that will get you to the goals that you want from the diversity. So you have to have ways that people will speak up, ways that people will contribute, understanding the differing cultures that people bring to the organization.
That's right. And they're so vitally needed. They have been needed. They're especially needed today as we're much more aware of this situation and this isn't going to be something that's going to be remedied in your lifetime or mine, right? We're going to be talking about this for a long time, but not just talking. It's something that needs action, right? Yeah. In every company, large or small.
Yeah. Right. And that's as good a message as any. Yeah. Yeah. Which is you can do a lot of talking, but until you have action, measurement, accountability.
That's right.
Yeah. Until you say this is as important in our organization as if we were a company that had to have great safety. We're an airline industry. Yeah. Okay. We have all sorts of norms around safety.
Right.
Everyone is responsible for safety. Safety is measured every way it can possibly be.
Yep.
And it's embedded in the organization.
That's right.
My friends Mark Donovan has talked about it in their book, the Diversity Dividend. Mm-hmm. And that notion of integrating safety in your organization. We don't want airplanes falling out of the sky.
That's right.
Right?
Top priority.
Right. That notion of putting it fully and embraced within the organization is key to make those kind of changes you're talking about.
And that can only come from the top down. That's not going to go from the middle up. That's got to be the C-suite. That's got to be the chairman of the board, the president, the CEO. They've got to lead that cause in their companies, right? It can't be something that we look at it as a checkbox and go, oh yeah, we've got that diversity training, we've got that, we did that piece on inclusion. Remember about a month ago when we talked about it, we brought everybody in and we talked about it. Yeah, it can't be that anymore. We just can't. That can't be tolerated. So, Laura Liswood, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. We very much appreciate it. Love to have you back because this, as I said, is an ongoing issue that every company needs to learn and hear more about. For those people that are watching us have this discussion today, check out her book. We're showing all the information here. To get a copy of it, you can click right underneath this video, and it'll take you right to get that copy and that book. So, Laura, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Well, I really enjoyed the interview, so thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Thanks for watching Diversity in Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick, Pash, Kane, Lewis, Greenfield, Reed, Dawson, Lopes, Rice. The best lineup in retail automotive. CBTnews.com. Subscribe today.